What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Wednesday, August 15th, 2018, middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Pauhana Friday. And what will hopefully be a relaxing weekend, because I think we could all use a break from just the utter insanity that is coming out of corporate media and government these days. Anyway, we have a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations here. So let's get right on into it now, starting with the war in Syria, which is all but over. The Syrian army is advancing on the last remnants of the ISIS cells in the al-Suwaida desert. And basically, again, this is the mopping up operation. The U.S. has lost this one. They don't want to admit it, but they have. The goal was to get rid of Bashar al-Assad. Bashar al-Assad is still in power. And, yeah, the U.S. has been shown to the rest of the world as not being invincible. They're a paper tiger. Same thing's going on up in Afghanistan as well right now. Speaking of Afghanistan, the Taliban is pushing back against ISIS expansion in Afghanistan. Now, gee whiz, I wonder who ISIS is working for up in Afghanistan. Probably the same people they were working for down in Syria. And ISIS is having a real tough time with the Taliban. Those are battle-hardened people here. And it's believed there are about 3,000 to 5,000 members of ISIS inside Afghanistan, and they're mostly in the province of Nangarhar. And the Taliban is going after them right now because the Taliban is smart enough to figure out who ISIS is really working for. But another article here, this one out of Russia Today, the U.S. is losing in Afghanistan. And they're losing because the Taliban learned a lesson from Vietnam. Just wait it out. Just wait out the United States and it will collapse. And that's exactly what the Viet Cong did to the United States. It was a war of attrition. And the U.S. lost that one. And so, yeah, not going very well over there in the war machine, which is not going to stop them, sadly, from starting more wars here and there. Because war, it's fantastic. It's good for business. Well, it's good for the defense business, but that's it. It's bad for everybody else. And if you don't believe me, again, just take a look around your town. Look at the infrastructure. Look at the retail vacancies. Look at the hungry and the homeless. All that money that's going into war comes out of your pocket. Comes out of the city budgets. Comes out of the budgets to keep the roads patched. It's just a way of skewing the economy away from the general population and into the military-industrial complex. Now, apparently, last July 30th, Trump offered an olive branch to Iran, saying that he would certainly meet with no preconditions with Dr. Hassan Rouhani if the Iranian president was willing to do so. And this looked like real good news here. And most Americans consider Trump's invitation for talks not just polite, but timely. And they think this is a chance for peace. And not taking that chance for peace would be a major mistake. But of course, those who want war in Iran are out there screaming that the president looks weak. He looks spineless. He's not willing to just shower the region in blood. But the hard reality is that it is the United States and not Iran who created this mess. The United States unilaterally pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. They just quit. They broke the bargain. The deal is still in place. Iran is sticking to the terms. Europe is sticking to the terms. The only nation that broke the agreement was the United States. And now they're trying to come on back and act like Iran is the bad guy. Okay, we got a whole bunch of callers on the line here. Let's go to Mo in Singapore. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Mr. Mike Rivero. Thank you very much for taking my call. You know, what has happened in Sweden just past couple of days is just incredible. That these refugees coming there, they get free medical, free health care, and I mean, everything pretty much is for them. They or very low cost, pay, and these people don't appreciate Sweden at all, and they have started, firebombing a lot of cars in Sweden. And, this is an alarming. And then before that, I'm sure you remember France, that 10 buses will catch a fire. And, those Muslim gangs, let's put it that way. I mean, Europe is burning right now.
Yes.
But are we next? Are we next, Michael Rivero? Or what do you think? Can you please elaborate on that, please?
I would say that, yes, we're going to see the same things here. It may even be happening, but as is the case in the European media, our media may simply not be reporting it.
For what reason they're not reporting? Means censorship, or just they're bypassing it? Means
well,
they go to different news.
They're trying to sell everybody that all of this multiculturalism is good and all of the refugees and illegal immigrants are a good thing. And this is both for political gain, to have these instant democratic voters, and also in support of the globalist agenda. And we're seeing there are already countries in Europe that have made it illegal to identify the ethnicity of these arrested criminals. The media is told to simply refer to them as the suspect, because every time there's been another rape or another arson or another robbery involving one of these refugees, it adds fuel to the fire to the European people, saying this has got to stop. And Soros and his ilk are out there pushing this New World Order agenda, and they're using all their influence to try and keep these incidents out of the media.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And regarding Iran, you made some comment a few minutes ago. Iran situation is very, very tense, because people in Iran really, they want democracy, but they cannot have the democracy. But, it actually should be up to the Iranian people to decide. If they want to rise up, they can go millions into the street, occupy the streets, and don't go back home until the Ayatollah's regime to be changed and everything go back, the temporary government, and from temporary government, then they choose the, correct government later on, which is based on democracy and etc. But they are not doing it. If they are not doing it, I know that Donald Trump says is going to go nuke Iran, for example, but why is up to us to do the freedom for Iran? Please elaborate on that.
That's just an excuse. I mean, this idea that we're bringing freedom and democracy to Iran is just for public consumption. The real issue is going on in there and making sure that Iran's oil is sold only for the US dollar, to bring down their state central bank and impose a private central bank on them, and to reduce Iran's political influence in the region, so that Israel can rise ascendant. Now, Iran actually does have a democracy. They do have elections. But you need to remember, back in 1979, when the Iranian people kicked out the Shah, they chose to bring back the Ayatollahs. And that was the government they wanted to have. And in 2009, when the U.S. tried to kick up a popular revolt in the streets of Iran, the Iranian people, when they realized it meant bringing back the Shah, they rejected that whole idea. I think the people of Iran In fact, there's actually a very good film out, Please Don't Tell My Mother I've Been to Iran, which is made by a Jewish filmmaker. And it basically shows the Iranian people are very happy the way things are. It's what they're used to. It's what they grew up with. And, it's very difficult to see people who are judging life in other countries based on how they live, because every country is going to be a little bit different. And it's not like these people are oppressed because they don't live like Americans. It's they choose not to live like Americans. They choose to live like Iranians.
But by force, many situation. I mean, like put a scarf or hijab, etc. Because otherwise they will take them to a FEMA camp in Iran, and then what will happen the rest of it, of course. But
I don't think I don't think there are any FEMA camps in Iran. That's a purely American institution.
No. Actually, there are Evin prison, which is Evin prison. They have so many of prisons that once the person goes, it will be.
Mo,
yes.
You're trying to tell us that the Federal Emergency Management Agency of the United States is maintaining prison camps in Iran?
No. But okay. I mean, the same situation. They have the same system, but it's called Evin prison. It's equivalent to the FEMA camp in, for example, United States. Is the same situation. They are very brutal to the prisoners. I mean, because they have national ID cards in Iran. So, they
we have a national ID card here in the United States. It's called Real ID. And we have a huge prison industrial. We have a huge prison industrial complex here as well that people are being thrown into for no other reason than these prison factories need certain skills. I think before we go on out and start criticizing Iran, we've got to clean up our own mess here. We have lost our moral authority to sit in judgment on any other country. Anyway, Mo, thank you for the phone call. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who just now rejoining the network, and we're going to switch over to Layla in Ontario. Aloha, Layla. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, hi, Mike. I was listening with some amusement to the gentleman who called in before for a couple of reasons. He's obviously very anti-Muslim from the Indian subcontinent, where there are a lot of people who hate Muslims, even though Muslims did invade India, and that in itself was an ancient historical event. So. But the Hindus and perhaps many of the other religious sects still hold a great deal of hostility towards Muslims. So there's a built-in bias in terms of the way they perceive things. Okay. As for Iran or any of the Middle East, Americans, Israelis are very soft. They have been too pampered by what we call a lifestyle of freedom. And I also take it, so when they're up against people who have lived, it's almost like a pampered people trying to fight the Spartans who were raised in a very Spartan way in order to be good warriors. These people have lived for millennia in constant states of battle or readiness for battle. Yes. Because life was so harsh in the Middle East. Including parts of Iran, and not all of Iran is one ethnic group. It is and was a huge area. But the one thing that did bind them together, this is where multiculturalism is an absurdity. If we're talking about one nation, there are of course multiple cultures around the world, but when you try to bind them together as one nation, you have to have one thread, one string that brings everyone together. In countries like Iran, or where it is predominantly Muslim, and this is something, ironically, that Prophet Muhammad realized when he was trying to create his ummah. It was Islam that united people. Amongst religions, Catholics, Christianity united them until they started having different sects, and then Christians were very brutal against one another. So it's human nature, I think, unfortunately, to find some excuse to attack the other or to perceive the other as the enemy. But this ganging up on Islam, I have to admit, even I engaged in it for a while. When I first discovered that my ancestry was likely Jewish, and a lot of it was simply blaming the victim for still being victims.
Yes.
I had been waiting so long for Palestine to find some kind of resolution with Israel so that some of us could go back if we wanted to. And there was a great deal of anger on my part towards Islam for having failed. And so this is where the sense of blaming the victim, I think, sometimes arises. Certainly that was in my case. But the other thing that I want to take issue with is a word that is used so promiscuously, it has absolutely no meaning anymore. Democracy. We're a democracy because we have elections. And we know the farce that so many elections are.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
originated.
technically, we're supposed to be a republic with a democratically elected government, but we know our elections have become an absolute joke. Our elections are so crooked, they have to screw those ballots into the ballot boxes.
I think part of it is that when something gets too large, when it's out of your reach and you cannot personally see. Remember the old saying, believe only half of what you see and none of what you hear?
Yep.
There's a certain amount of legitimacy to that. When democracy is attributed to the Athenians, now Athens was the capital of Attica, but that was not the first city-state that actually practiced democracy. It was practiced in other Greek city-states before, and perhaps in a better form. Now, what we forget is that even when democracy was practiced in Athens, it was only free men who owned land who were allowed to vote.
Yes.
And the ancient Greeks were amongst the highest users of slaves. They were the place where all the others who went into war specifically so they could capture captives and sell them as slaves. In fact, often the slave traders used to follow the armies and buy the slaves, the captives, right on site because it was cheaper, and then they would take them and market them. And the Greeks were the greatest users. That's why they had such a fancy society, because they didn't have to do the actual labor. So this notion of democracy was once so great in the great city of Athens is another fallacy that has been handed down to us by the distortions of academic institutions that like to believe that they are themselves a democracy, when we know one of the first democracies in England is probably still has a monarchy.
Yes.
How that is compatible with human beings being equal when they treat the monarchs, although they've given up publicly stating that they are divine rulers on behalf of God here on earth. It's the whole concept of a monarchy is ridiculous. It's just incompatible with the sense of equality of human beings. And I don't mean equality of outcome, but equality of opportunity. And certainly the monarchy has opportunities that are far and away in excess of anything available to the common person.
Well, that's true, but you know, the British people actually like the royals. The royals don't really have that much power and authority anymore. They just have a lot of wealth. But the British do like the royals because it's part of their tradition. It's part of their self-image. And so I don't see that changing anytime soon.
No, I don't think it will. And obviously the modern monarchy has adapted very well. This recent inclusion of a woman who is biracial, although she doesn't appear to be biracial, and a lot of that, again, I don't want to get into the notion of what a person does to appear attractive.
Okay, Layla.
But we know that there are...
Layla, got to put you on hold. Got to take a break for commercials. Do not hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And once again, if you'd like to help out Republic Broadcasting, and folks, we really do need it. This is not a joke. The postal address to send a check or money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Road, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can call in with a credit or debit card donation or pledge to be a recurring subscriber is 800-724-2719, extension 1 during business hours, extension 3 at all other times. And folks, I'm serious. We really, really, really need your help. All right, getting back to the phones, we're talking with Layla out of Ontario. We were talking last about the British Royals and why the British people don't seem to see it as incompatible with elections. Of course, Britain has as much trouble with their elections as the United States. We know there was a lot of fraud in the Scottish independence referendum. We know there was a lot of fraud in Brexit, but not enough to tip it over to the Remain side. So, what next?
A quick note, a quick comment on Brexit. The name Farage, although Farage or Farage, that, by the way, is of Middle Eastern origin, and it means, depending on whether it's from the Persian perspective or the Arab perspective, it means a peek into the future or a break in the darkness where you can see something. So it's ironic that Nigel Farage would have that name. Now, I know his family migrated from France as, I think, Protestant Huguenots, and went to England because Protestantism was more acceptable there.
Yes.
But I suspect that they were his ancient ancestors may have been migrants from the Middle East. But then again, back onto the concept of the monarchy. I live in Canada. My taxes, whether it's 1 penny or 1 loonie, loony than lunatic, but we also support the monarchy. And I don't like that because Britain is largely responsible for what happened in Palestine, and that is why many people dislike the British monarchy. Indians also were robbed.
Yes.
I think it's called the paradox of plenty. They were robbed by the British. The Scots were utterly destroyed, even though the Scots were not one ethnicity, but many clans, not all of the same ethnic group. They also were destroyed by the British. Now, Runnymede was all about the king being accountable to the people. Now, the only way that the monarchy in Britain today is accountable to the people is that they presumably do not interfere in political affairs, but we all know full well that Charles has been interfering for a long time, and that has been the secret tradition in the past. And the Church of England itself, apparently the Archbishop Lang is the one who actually contrived and conspired to bring down Edward VIII because he was taking on such common activities as treating the people as equals and dispensing with the expense of ceremonial issues. But that too is a very long story. But with regard to who really does accept the monarchy today, I'd say with the changes in the demographics of Britain, I would like to see what the current view is of the monarchy. Not so much the monarchy itself as a stage show, which is a great tourist attraction, but as actually being, even in name only, a ceremonial ruler of the people. But now back to the concept of democracy and multiculturalism. It's not compatible. It simply doesn't work. You cannot be both a democracy and multicultural. Take the leader of our NDP, the New Democratic Party here in Canada, the leader Jagmeet Singh, whom I largely admire, is married to a woman of his own people. One of the more prominent men here in Canada, I won't mention his name, he used to be with the Greek Party, not with the Greek Party, but with the Green Party.
Yes.
He is Greek, and he has married a Palestinian woman, I am told, but they would both be Orthodox. People tend to find something where there are similarities, where they can relate to one another, whether it's culture through religious practices or culture through ethnic practices. And multiculturalism might have worked in one nation if there had been one binding thread, either religion or political ideology. And the ones here in Canada that I do know from personal experience that are great in keeping people divided along ethnic lines is the Liberal Party, which used to call itself the natural governing party of Canada because they were in power for so long. And how they succeeded was to court the leaders of ethnic groups, bribe them, and then get them to dictate to their people how they were to vote, because most of them knew nothing about democracy. You don't just imbue democracy by landing on soil and breathing the air. You live it through generations, or at least one generation of education. Yeah. But what they did was they bribed the leaders. So it is not democracy when you have an ethnic group leader saying from the pulpit, as occurred here in London, where in Ontario, where the leader during a religious practice told the people, make sure you go out and vote for brother so-and-so because he's sympathetic to our political ambitions.
Okay, Layla, I'm sorry to have to do this.
I know, I've been on too long.
Yeah, I got to cut you off. We got commercials. We got a bunch of callers waiting on the line, and I need to get to them here. So thank you for the phone call, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show, and let's get to some of these people who have been waiting so patiently on the phone, starting with Chuck in Texas. Aloha, Chuck. Thank you for waiting. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, Michael, my favorite talk show host. Okay, I tried to write you an email, by the way, and I can't get your email thing to work on your website. I'm not sure what's up. I click it and nothing happens. Maybe you can explain that to me on air after we have this discussion. I want to ask a question. Is there anything Trump can do, or his administration can do, that people will finally say, wait a minute, this guy is not who he says he is? His every action, his every appointment is against everything we stand for. And yet everyone makes just excuse after excuse after excuse for this guy. And I'm called a conspiracy theorist because I say, hell, he's given the deep state, in your own words, giving the deep state everything they want, but the left is attacking him. Why? Because they want you defending him because they're attacking him. I'm a conspiracy theorist. Well, JFK was killed by Oswald, right?
Well,
9/11 was not an inside job. How big can a conspiracy be in this country? It can be as wide as saying, we're going to get Trump because he can beat Hillary. We have to knock Hillary out because, who's the guy that, I'm sorry, senior moment, who's the guy that they cheated out of the
Bernie Sanders.
Democratic nominee. Bernie Sanders can beat Trump. But Trump will give us everything we want because he's an egotist. He can say he was president. He'll go along with, and they just tell him, here's what's going to happen. We're going to get you elected. And you'll give us everything we want. You can say you were president. Doesn't that make more sense than what's going on today?
No, it doesn't really make a lot of sense because it's inconsistent with the actions of the DNC and the Hillary campaign. It's inconsistent with the actions of the Republican National Committee, which basically was out there trying to derail Trump's nomination. However, they've gotten Trump under their control. It wasn't a guarantee. I think the deep state wanted to put Hillary in, mostly because Hillary was threatening to blackmail everybody or out their corruptions if she wasn't handed the White House. As she was saying herself, it was her turn. Mike, Trump is definitely a disappointment here. But I think...
Please, don't we understand? We know the voters, it could have been rigged very easily, and Hillary would have won. But
they did rig it. They didn't rig it enough.
Well,
okay.
The people of America. And we have this argument. We have this kabuki dance.
Chuck, the people of America just rejected Hillary Clinton flat on out. And there was a lot of cheating going on, but they didn't cheat enough. And that's why Hillary beat the heck out of John Podesta after she lost the election. I don't think there was a plot to put Trump in. I think there was a plot to keep him out. There's still a plot to try and get him out. And we're just going to have to agree to disagree on that one. So, Chuck, thank you very much for the phone call.
Okay, wait.
We're going to switch over to Steve in West Virginia. Steve, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I got two quick things for you. And first, I want to tell you, I just listen to you and Jeff Rentz. That's it. You guys are my two shows. Once in a while, I'll watch a couple of YouTube videos, but that's it. Let me go to my first thing for you. And I missed your show, your last 2 hours yesterday, and whatever I missed today. But I want to know if you've reported on anything to do with this strange thing. This lady they found dead in the hotel room, Jen Moore.
Yes.
Supposedly, okay, you've talked about that?
I haven't talked about it, but I definitely posted it to whatreallyhappened.com. Yeah,
it's very, very interesting. This woman was apparently investigating that Bill Clinton might have raped a young boy and then, pimped him out to the D.C. elite at parties and stuff, and at the Epstein Island, and now she's turned up dead.
Yep.
Another person that's turned up dead.
And it happens a lot around the Clintons.
Yeah. The other thing I've got is I've heard some information coming out now with regard to Seth Rich that the party he was at, they're starting to say that it was at an Awan Brothers house, a property that's owned by the Awan Brothers. And man, this Seth Rich thing, I think if you can crack that, you're going to crack a lot of things open.
Yeah.
I'd like to see you get like Rod Wheeler or Matt Couch or somebody on as a guest that really knows. I mean, all they're doing is following the Seth Rich thing. And the Seth Rich thing to me is super, super interesting. There's a lot tied to that.
No, there's no question about that. And I was unaware that the party, I was even unaware Seth Rich had been at a party. The original report was that he'd simply been out at an after-hours place. But if he was at a party at the Awans, again, this starts to link together the Awans intelligence operation with the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign. So I think there is a big stink in there somewhere. And I keep maintaining it's a legitimate question. Given the history of what the Clintons did during the Chinagate scandal back in 1996, it's legitimate to ask if Hillary Clinton, while Secretary of State, was selling U.S. secrets to foreign interests using her weak email server to deliver the material and her so-called charitable foundation to collect and launder the money.
Right. And another thing that's come out recently is they're saying that now that Seth Rich had another cell phone that nobody knew about. And do you also know that the murder of Seth Rich is the only Caucasian murder that's been unsolved in Washington, D.C. in the last 12 years?
I was unaware of that. And, of course, the sense I get is they weren't looking to solve it anyway. I mean, they simply declared it a botched robbery, even though, he had a very expensive necklace, his watch, his cell phone. Nothing was taken. He was just shot twice in the back.
Yeah. Well, Rod Wheeler, both Frank Whalen and Rod Wheeler, who the family hired to investigate it, both say that it's totally solvable and that they could solve it if they were, if they had some certain information that they won't let be released.
Yeah. No, I think
Seth Rich was. That's all I've got.
Yeah, I think Seth Rich was the leak that leaked the emails to WikiLeaks through a cutout. And this whole story about Russian hacking was just part of the cover-up for his murder. Anyway, Steve, thanks an awful lot there. We're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Maybe Seth Rich had another USB thumb drive on him and that was taken, We don't know what else he had. If they had time to find it on him, that's what's good thing about how small those are. Takes a long time to find something like that. It's a lot harder to find that than a folder, carrying a folder around.
Yeah, and even more interestingly, a lot of flash drives are made to look like something else, like a fountain pen or a money clip or something like that. It's very easy to hide data on those things.
Yeah, they have the size of your thumbnail. You can just cut a hole in your shoe and then put shoe polish over that spot, right? You can stick it in there with sticky tape or something. Yeah,
Yep.
And they'll never find it, Very easy, right? Hey, Mike, but we're a democracy. They're hacking our democracy. Yeah, we're not a democracy. I mean, our institutions, our democratic institutions, they're all corrupt.
Yes.
We're not a democracy. I mean, what a joke. I mean, it's the biggest lie. And I want to tell this to people: if we're a real, true democracy, is like the town saying, "Hey, we're gonna rip your house down and put like a playground on top of it." And then, if you're a true democracy, they would vote on it and they'd say, "Okay." And if you were against it, it'd still be okay. They'd tear your house down, put a playground on it. That's a true democracy. We're not. But we're not even a democratic election process anymore. I mean, we probably haven't been for over 150 years or something. And the rest of the world's not a democracy either, the West. But Mike, I think they say that, it's just like we're exceptional. And it makes us feel good. Well,
Yes.
We're exceptional and we're democratic, so get out of my way, buddy. I mean, that's the only reason we keep saying that,
Well,
I mean,
no,
we
that's
got more
not-
surveillance cameras.
That's not the only reason. I mean, basically, the government is trying to reassure the American people that they are still somehow in control over the course of the nation. But it's a flat-out lie because we keep voting for the people who promise lower taxes and no more wars, and we get higher taxes and more wars. And so, again, this idea that we're a democracy, it's just window dressing over what has become a fascist economic dictatorship.
But you know what's even funnier, Mike? Other NATO countries are, other NATO members don't attack other NATO members. Well, the last time I checked, economic warfare is an act of war.
Yes.
So, I mean, it boggles my mind. It's the whole, it's all a joke. It's all a lie, and it's all, crap. I mean, Saudi Arabia is a dictatorship, but we're a democracy. We're arming the jihad. I mean, come on. I mean, my God, people. Where was Mo from anyway when he called? I mean, come on, man. Democracy just don't exist anymore. I don't even know if it ever did, Mike. I mean,
Well, for as long as there's been elections, there's been election rigging. The question is, how much of it, and as our election system has evolved, unfortunately, instead of evolving toward a system that makes it hard to cheat and easy to discover the cheaters, we've gone the other way. Our election system, especially with all these electronic machines, seems designed to enable, facilitate, and then conceal massive election fraud.
And Mike, I wanted to turn real quick to the economic. I think the stock market was down again today. It didn't go up, did it?
Yeah, the Dow closed 137 down.
Yeah, I mean, come on, people. I mean, Trump is a disappointment. I mean, I don't know if I'm even going to vote for him anymore. I mean, it's just me. I don't think Hillary's going to run again. I don't know. Unless they get an independent one-legged midget in, I'll vote for him over Trump. But I don't know. The guy's a disappointment. But I mean, why did he wait so long to pull John Brennan's clearance? I mean, the guy's waiting too long to do stuff. This is going on. Fire Mueller. That's one thing that bothers me about this whole thing. Why is he waiting on so long to do stuff like that?
I agree. I agree. And my questions are, why is he not backing Robert Kennedy Jr. on the vaccine safety issue? Why did he shut down the Voting Integrity Commission and just turn it all over to the Department of Homeland Security? Trump really is a disappointment. And you're right. He's spending all of his time obsessing over the wars in Israel, and he's not really getting much done here inside the United States of America.
Yeah, it's like he's supposed to be a businessman who has a keen eye for stuff. What the hell is he waiting for all these things? I mean, fired is. I mean, what happened to you're fired? Now, what are you waiting? A year and 6 months? I mean, the investigation's been going on for how long? Hey,
Yeah.
Mueller, you're fired. That's it. But I mean, Hey, man, I guess, it's all a TV show, right? It's all, you know what, Mike? This is a reality TV show. This is the real reality TV, not what the crap you watch on TV, because this is what's going on now.
I agree, and I've been saying all along, Trump needs to put on those presidential brass knuckles and start doing the job. Especially this idea about not demanding a National Voter ID Act and not demanding an overhaul of the election system. He could very well lose the House of Representatives this November, at which point all these investigations into the FBI and the Department of Justice and this whole Russiagate stuff, it's all going to be thrown away. And the Democrats will launch all sorts of new bogus investigations into Donald Trump. And he's going to be a one-term president. The only way I would support him in 2020 is if Hillary does run again. But interestingly enough, after her one announcement followed by that very cryptic message about, not putting her family through this, we haven't heard another word from her.
Yeah, but Mike, you know what? If he's only a one-term president, he'll write a book just like Omarosa, and it'll say, later, suckers, because Trump would do that. That's his temperament, So all these people are writing books and they're just see you later. So just like Obama, look how much they're making. He's making more now on a campaign on doing that scene with interviews and all that than he was making money as president. That's where it's at, I guess. So forget the American people or whatever. It's like what a joke. I don't know.
I don't know that these people are making that much money with the books. I mean, the political tell-all books that have been coming on out, they're not good sellers. People just are burned out on all the corruption and scandal, and they've lost interest, and the books are not really doing all that well. I think it's more a case of vanity. They want to say, I'm an author. See, I wrote a book. And I don't know that they're actually getting that much money. Now, some of these people will get a huge advance on the book, but I think that's a form of legal political payoff. Did we lose Dustin? Okay, let's switch over to Pam in Washington State. Aloha, Pam. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Lost Pam.
I'm sorry?
We lost Pam.
We lost Pam. All right, well, the phone lines are open here. And getting on back to the news here. One of our callers called in yesterday talking about this deal over the Caspian Sea. And there was a follow-up article here from Russia Today saying that basically this Caspian deal is an antidote to Washington's bully boy tactics. So I'm not the only one who says that the U.S. government's public image is that of a bully. But apparently Azerbaijan, Iran, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Russia basically came to an agreement sharing the resources of the Caspian Sea, which is the world's largest inland body of water. And, Pam is back, but we have to take a break for commercials, so we're going to listen to some sponsors, and as soon as we come back, we'll take the phone call from Pam. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go back to the telephones here, and we're going to talk to Pam. And aloha, Pam. What is on your mind today?
Aloha, Michael. Aloha, Nui Nui. This is Fran from Washington State.
Fran from Washington State. Okay, my mistake. And what is on your mind?
Well, I called in to repeat what Benjamin Franklin said when asked, what kind of government do we have? And he said, we have a republic if we can keep it.
Yes.
So that's for Dustin.
Yeah, I mean, technically this country has always been a republic with a democratically elected government. That last part is the part that's broken down now. And the real problem with that, of course, is politicians are feeling less and less dependent on the goodwill of the American people and more dependent on the goodwill of their corporate sponsors. And that's why we're basically drifting into fascism here, which is also another name for corporatism.
Absolutely, and Aaron Russo would be proud of you. That's all I've got today, Michael. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah, Aaron was a good guy. We had him on the show here, and on the DVD that he sent me of Freedom to Fascism actually has a quote of mine right on the outside case, which I have that framed on the wall. All right, so the phone lines are open. Let's get on back here to the news here. Interestingly enough, Australia, scientists down in Australia have detected these radioactive isotopes which are in the sheep. And they think the source of them is an incident that happened 39 years ago called the Vela incident. And on September 22nd, 1979, U.S. satellite Vela 6911, which was a nuclear warhead detection satellite, detected a double flash signature near the Marion and Prince Edward Islands in the southern Indian Ocean. And ever since there's been speculation, it was actually a nuclear weapon test carried out by Israel and South Africa jointly. This was also at the same time when Israel was trying to negotiate the sale of a nuclear weapon to South Africa. And according to the memoirs of former President Jimmy Carter, this was also the conclusion of American generals who briefed him on the incident. Now, of course, Israel's official position is nuclear weapons? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. You shouldn't ask. You're an anti-Semite if you ask us about our nuclear weapons. Okay, the U.S. is going to double the number of Marines stationed in Norway and to counter Russian aggression. And actually, it's the U.S. who's being the aggressor here. They're claiming it's only for training purposes, but it's still making the Russians nervous. We got to take a break for station identification. Back with hour number 2 after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're going to take a phone call from Mitch in Memphis. Aloha, Mitch. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mitch, are you there? I'm not hearing Mitch.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Mitchell, Memphis.
Okay, now you're on the air. Now I can hear you. What's on your
Mitchell,
mind?
Memphis. 1, 2, 3. You hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Hey, Mike. Following up on this. Can you hear me?
I hear you now. Yes.
Let's go. Problem, reaction, solution. Internet censorship edition. YouTube. This is James Corbett. He talks about the censorship issue and takes an interesting take. I wish you'd look at it. Real quick on Alex Jones. I don't like him. You know that. There's a video called "InfoWars Employees Expose Alex Jones." It's an outfit called No More News. Dustin, you watch this one too. I know you're listening. By the way, it's everybody. These people. It's Rob Jacobson, Rob Jacobson, Aaron and Melissa Dykes, Anthony Gucciardi, Kurt Nemo, Lou Gradowski, David Icke, Jason Vermis, Wayne Match. Everybody's talking about how they can't stand the guy. He's a megalomaniacal, egotistical, narcissistic, fill in the blank. And by the way, number 2 on Alex Jones, you can ask your boss, John Statmiller, about the Jack Blood, or Jack Blood. Jack Blood used to work there at RBN. And find out what happened to Deborah Dean. You talk about tinkering with elections. Alex Jones in the Austin market, Mark Davis in the Texas market, and what was his name? Glenn Beck. All 3 of them did a tag team on Deborah Medina, the people's candidate, going against 2 Bilderberg, Kay Bailey Hutchison and Rick Perry in the 2010 election, and sculled her attempt, and she was doing very well. Now, that's when I said no more. So I'm not going to go long on that. I'll try tonight to find the quintessential of video of Jack Blood talking about it, and he can explain it. And I'll call back later this week. But real quick, Mike, about the left-right thing that's going on in America, you're sort of guilty of falling prey to it. You said that that you knew nothing about Alex Jones.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, you said you didn't. You had a big dust up about Israel, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
But you told a caller that we need to support Alex. So, and then you said if Alex Jones ran for the president, you would support him. What would Thomas Jefferson say? What did he say? It's imperative that we have an informed electorate. And you're basically saying you would vote for a man, but that by your own admission, you know nothing about him. But you would vote.
Wait a minute. I didn't say that. You're putting words in my mouth. Now let's back up here a little bit.
That you support him.
Let me back up here a little bit. I said we all need to support Alex Jones, not because we like or dislike Alex Jones. This is not about Alex Jones. In fact, when we get down to that part of the talking points, even more people have now been deplatformed. This is an issue of freedom of speech for us all. And that's why we have to stand together. As Ben Franklin would have said, we have to hang together or surely we will hang separately. So that's that issue. Now, as far as Alex Jones, I have my differences of opinion with him. But he is even more of an outsider than Donald Trump was. And what we need is outsiders. We need a complete changing of the guard in Washington, D.C. I'm seriously thinking about trying to run for office in 2020. Because we need to get some people into.
Mike, we don't need a tyrannical, egocentric maniac outsider. We don't need to follow that. But real quick,
we've already got one
with the censorship.
We've already got one. Okay, and we voted.
Yeah, we don't need another one.
We voted.
We don't need another one.
Hang on, Mitch. We voted him in because we didn't want Hillary Clinton. And the same thing applies to Alex Jones. I have my differences with him. But I don't want any of the traditional insider politicians in that Oval Office anymore because it never seems to work on out. So that's basically where I'm coming from.
May I say one more thing?
This is an issue of freedom of speech.
May I say one more thing quickly?
One more thing.
May I say one more thing quickly, Mike? I agree with the censorship. This is an issue that we need to discuss. In regards to that, those are separate issues over there about other people being deplatformed. Okay, I'm talking about Alex Jones. The jury is still out, quite literally in this sense. We need to know if he's guilty of defamatory speech or not. So when we look at the analogy, the straw man, the analogy that I brought up about yelling fire in the crowded theater, we don't know if the theater's on fire or not. So let's wait and see if there really is a fire or not. I don't like Alex Jones for good reasons. You can go and watch these videos and do some legwork, you too, Dustin, and you can learn about how horrible Alex Jones is.
Mitch,
he's a detriment to any freedom movement.
Listen to me. This is not about Alex Jones. It's about freedom of speech. And I wish you'd get off the rant about Alex Jones because it's getting a little bit tiresome. All right? We have to all...
He ruined Deborah Dean's chance for governor. He ruined it.
All right. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. All right. And we're going to switch over to Mark in Texas. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, howdy, Mr. Rivero. How are you doing?
Doing all right.
Awesome. I kind of wanted to... I've been listening for quite a while. This is the first time I've ever called in any kind of a show. So, kind of wanted to talk about socialism and what I'm seeing as a trend in this country that's very disturbing. I got a degree in history, and you look at the downward spiral of these foreign nations and how they went from being kind of a soft tyranny or a light monarchy into a socialist hellhole, and we're following the same thing. And I think you've got to control the information. I think that's what the Alex Jones situation is.
Yep.
They're controlling the information, whether you like the guy or you don't. I find it very disturbing that we're allowing multinational conglomerates to limit the amount of information that the U.S. people can get. You got to rewrite history. I think that's what a lot of this tearing down of statues and the political correctness movement of every black person's been a slave and every white person was a slave owner, and rewrite the history of the Confederacy, which I'm not a Confederate. My family came here less than 50 years ago, 100 years ago. But the next step is scary because the next step you're going to start seeing punitive measures being taken against people that disagree with them or ethnic minorities. That's even more disturbing. And right now, essentially, we've turned our police into an internal military. And in a lot of cases, we're allowing that internal military to take some some drastic measures against the American populace, against the civilian population. We don't need to have our police force militarized like it is. Number one, I wouldn't want to be a cop, God bless them, but and I don't think that they should have immunity. And in a lot of places, they have not only immunity, but if you do something to them, it's a lot more extreme than if you did it against your neighbor. So we're setting up a special class of, I want to call them thugs because they're not, but essentially like the brown shirts were in the 1938 Germany, where these guys went out to kind of, keep the powers that be in power. And if you did anything against the brown shirts, you were severely penalized for it. That's what I'm seeing in this country, and it's scary, Mike. It really is.
Yeah, it really is, and yeah, we're seeing brown shirt tactics in the streets of America, and it is a very scary time. We do seem to be sliding down that slope into tyranny and dictatorship, and endless war, and I'm doing my best to try and stop it now.
I actually work in the oil field here in Texas. I live way up in rural Montana, and I come down here and I work 3 weeks out of the month. And I think the oil exploration and the expansion of the oil here in the States is going to be a big help. We are pretty close to being oil independent right now. Problem is we're still fighting wars, and I don't understand it. Everybody will tell you we're fighting wars over oil, but we got more oil than
we're not fighting the wars over the oil. We're fighting wars over what currency the oil is traded in. That's the difference.
Sure. And I understand the petrodollar. Yeah, I understand the petrodollar. You're correct on that, I think. But we could cut off relations as far as the oil and all that, and we as the United States are going to survive just fine. We've got all of our own stuff. I understand the petrodollar, and I understand them going after Gaddafi over the gold dinar and all that. But if you talk to the average person on the street, they'll tell you that we're fighting a war in the Middle East because we need the oil. First of all, we don't even import oil out of the Middle East. What little we do import comes out of Mexico and Canada. We really aren't a net importer of oil. We're a net exporter now. We're starting to export oil, which gives us actually, it's a good income stream. But just what I'm seeing is very scary. My mother was a Jew from Europe, and man, the horror story she told, and she wasn't from Germany. She was from Russia, actually. And the Russians were pretty rough on the Jews over there.
Yes.
She came to the States. She was probably the most loyal American you've ever met in your life. She's passed away now, but, it's very concerning. I just wanted to voice my opinion. I also wanted to say, if you think socialism works, don't look at Venezuela. That's a complete failure. Look at what's going on in South Africa. Okay? And I'm not a racist. I'm not supporting apartheid. But under apartheid, things seem to work pretty good. It's just that they didn't include the black population. Now, when they put in this socialist group, the ANC, look at what it's degenerating into. That's our next step right there. They're going to come after minorities, ethnic groups. I don't think necessarily minorities, but groups. So,
well,
Mike, I really appreciate you taking the call, and I might take more than 2 years to call next time.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the call. We're already seeing it in the United States, this demonization of white people, and it's become socially acceptable to discriminate against white people just for being white. We are definitely headed the same direction as Zimbabwe and South Africa. And again, I don't like to see that. All right, we're going to take a phone call from Steve Elkins. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I heard Mitch for the umpteenth time talking about the same thing. Seems like he has a little agenda there.
Yes.
But I agree with you. We need to support Alex Jones for the First Amendment rights. Supporting that supports us and RBN. It supports Truth Frequency Radio, GCN, and many other independent media formats. And that's what this is about. Whether you like Alex Jones or not, I happen to think he's done some good for the movement in independent media. I commend him on that. Is he 100% correct on everything? No. Are we always correct on everything? No. But I do support the First Amendment and the right to say what I need to say, as you do. And Mitch needs to get off this wagon of, going after Alex Jones because this is about First Amendment, not Alex Jones, despite what he has done in the past. This is about First Amendment rights, protecting those rights.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Well, I think Mitch, it was his agenda is to make Alex Jones look like an unsympathetic character so that people stop supporting him. But as I kept trying to get through to Mitch, this wasn't about Alex Jones, and it never really was. Other people are now being deplatformed, and you know, at some point they may start actually coming after those independent media who have their own servers, as opposed to Gab, which was, I guess, in danger of being kicked off of the Microsoft cloud. So we'll. You know, we just do the best that we can and we keep going. But yeah, Mitch definitely had an agenda coming on in here. And one of the reasons Alex Jones may have been targeted, yes, he's the figurehead, he's the icon, he's the most visible of the independent media. But it may also be tied in with that defamation trial, which is before a jury rather than a judge. And it may be that Wolfgang Halbig is demonstrating to the jury there are legitimate reasons to doubt that story. And if Alex Jones and Wolfgang Halbig win that trial, it's going to be a major shakeup for the U.S. government. And maybe they went after Alex Jones to try and limit how much people would find out about it, because they'll never admit it in the corporate media that Alex Jones won, that they succeeded in convincing a jury that there was something funny about the official story of Sandy Hook.
Yeah. You know, I noticed that Mitch didn't list the comments, supposedly the hate speech comments that supposedly Alex Jones had said, and I have yet to see anybody actually list them and put them down on paper to say this is what he said, this is what he said, and make their point and prove their case. We say a lot of things. I say a lot of things. You say a lot of things.
Yep.
I guess, you know, you could say, is it really hate speech, or is it just speech that you hate because you disagree with me? Big difference there. And I noticed that Mitch didn't bother to put any of those comments out there that the media is running with, saying this is hate speech. Well, what is it? Tell us what the hate speech is. And we're old enough, we're mature enough to know what a hate speech is and what isn't hate speech. And I noticed he never offered any of the hate speech, supposedly.
Well, you hit it right on the head here. Hate speech is speech that you disagree with, especially from the liberal point of view. And they've succeeded in creating this label, you know, of hate speech. It's hate speech, therefore it's okay to ban it and suspend the First Amendment. And now they're just applying it to everything they don't agree with. Oh, that's hate speech. It makes me upset. I'm offended by that. It's hate speech. So I have a right to silence you and deplatform you and pull you off the air. But that's exactly what it is. It's just a handle to bypass the First Amendment. And unfortunately, it is being used rather liberally against the independent media and along with other forms of harassment.
Well, that's it for me, Mike. I appreciate it. Have a great show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Mike, I just had to comment after I heard Mitch there before. You know, Alex Jones says some things that I don't totally agree with. He says a lot of things that I totally agree with. But that's not the point. He brought up something about Deborah Medina. Back, I lived in Texas back then when she was running for governor.
Yep.
You know, trying to get out a primarying Rick Perry.
Yeah.
And what happened is Glenn Beck, at the time, I was still listening to him somewhat, you know, and I still thought he was all right. Glenn Beck ambushed her on his show about 9/11. Thing is, you know, saying, well, do you believe in isolation? No, but do you know people that do? Well, I know some people that, you know, I'm not going to condemn them. That's their opinion or something. And right away he said, well, there you go. You know, he ambushed it. Then he cut everything off with her. Probably Rick Perry put him up to it. But the thing is, at that time, Beck had written a book called The Overton Window. It's the only book I ever actually read by Beck, okay? And he called it faction, not fiction. He said it was faction. The whole thing about that book was a false flag ending in the government working together with like Wall Street types.
Yep.
Tried to plan to blow up Las Vegas with a nuclear weapon, and it was stopped by an Alex Jones type guy and a rogue FBI agent. When I say rogue, I mean an FBI agent who's actually good, but against the establishment. So he talks this way, and he said that's faction. The man's a liar. But Jones never, as a matter of fact, I just started listening to Jones around that time, and Jones took him on about that because Jones, Jones of course thinks 9/11 is an inside job, as do I. I didn't used to think that way. I thought that way as the years went on, and after I got red-pilled, and one of the people who red-pilled me, in fact, the main person who red-pilled me was Alex Jones. So, I used to hear you on that show once in a while also. But the fact of the matter is, for this guy to say that, that's total nonsense. Beck, I don't know about Mark Davis. Mark Davis is a jerk. I remember him from Texas. I think he used to have a syndicated show on weekends too around the country. He's he's one of these neocon type so-called conservatives. He's not really a conservative. He's like I said, he's a typical neocon, and he's not even worth even mentioning. But Beck ambushed her, but Jones didn't. Jones condemned him for that. Jones and Beck never liked each other. They never worked together. They hate each other's guts. So I mean, this is that's total nonsense. I don't know where this guy gets that stuff from. But in effect, Jones is not perfect. He is a very opinionated guy. He is pretty loud, and I guess he makes enemies sometimes. Just on that's not necessarily policy differences. Just one thing leads to another. Like I don't know why he's no longer friends with the guys on We Are Change. Luke, what's his name? Luke something or another.
Yeah. Anyway, listen. Yeah, I need to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. We got another caller waiting on the line, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And before we take this next caller, Representative Maxine Waters was on the TV. Apparently, she's got a birthday coming up. And somebody asked her what she wanted for her birthday, and she said, for Trump to leave office. Give it a rest, Maxine. All right, back to the phones here. Dustin in New Jersey. Normally, we only allow one call per caller per day, but I understand you had a follow-up to one of our earlier calls.
Yeah, I got to respond to Mitch, Mike. Come on, man. If you don't like it, I said this before, there's a thing called either the remote control or the mouse click, But he does seem like he's got an Alex Jones type of issue because he didn't want to hear about the other people that were platformed.
Yeah, I noticed that. I noticed that.
Hey, Mike, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. What happened to that thing?
Well, Antifa started using sticks and stones. And as far as Mitch is concerned, I think his goal was to make Alex Jones look unsympathetic so that we stop caring about his being deplatformed. But as I kept trying to tell him, this is not about Alex Jones or any other individuals who've been deplatformed. This is about freedom of speech and preserving and protecting that, especially in this particular time. And Alex Jones was targeted because he's very prominent. He's also having to deal with that lawsuit or lawfare. But it's spreading. And we'll be talking about that a little bit later in the show.
You just said it. He's popular, and look at all the people that watch him, and that's the threat. Because, like it or not, he helped get Trump elected, and that's a fact.
Yes.
Along with all the other people. But if you look at it, the numbers, him and Michael Savage. But like I said, if you don't like it, don't listen to it. But I want to hear everything, And by the way, what about defaming Russia with all this crap? What about defaming Assad against his own people? What about defaming Saddam Hussein with phony weapons of mass destruction? That's all defamatory language, right?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, yeah. And what about all the crap coming out of Maxine Waters, all these other people? My God, man. I didn't hear one peep of Mitch from that.
Nope.
And Mike, that's all I need is, and Mitch, Don't ever be a taxi cab driver in New York, okay? There's plenty of defamatory stuff going on there. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot here. And again, we'll be talking about this more in our third hour. It's a First Amendment issue. It's not about Alex Jones. It's not about me. It's not about John Stedmiller. It's not about any one individual. It is about freedom of speech. Okay, back to the phones, to Cameron in the United Kingdom. Aloha, Cameron. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Thank you very much for taking my call. Michael, it's about freedom of speech, but more than that, it's about our fight to preserve our freedom of speech. The problem is that just like last year or 2 years ago, we treat Twitter, Facebook, and all these people like they're the only social media available on the internet. It's not the case anymore. There's a lot of alternatives out there. I mean, if Alex Jones or if any of the people, including you, God forbid, someday to get sort of get a ban from YouTube, there's always alternative, and you have the power to move people from YouTube with you to the alternate place. And that is the fight that we have to fight. It's, as you said, it's not about Alex Jones. It's not about really any one person. It's about our fight.
Yes.
To actually preserve that freedom. Otherwise, we're not worth it. We're not worth having that freedom, although we were born with it. We have to fight to preserve it.
Yes.
That's my 2 cents regarding that. Also, about the first caller that you had, Mo from Singapore.
Yes.
I think, Michael, each country have their own laws, which are based on their values.
Yes.
In Iran, obviously, they have their own values and their own laws based on those values. If they, well, the guy said FEMA camps, but I think he meant prisons in Iran. Yes, if they break the law, they put them in prison. The fact is that the values in Iran are different. There are more women university students than there are men in Iran.
Yes.
And a lot of them. This is the value that they uphold. It's not the, I mean, the problem is that if they're not allowed to wear bikinis, we condemn them, which is wrong. And that's my 2 cents regarding this one as well.
Yeah,
so, thank you very much.
Your choice of bathing
nice
costume,
show.
It's a matter of fashion. I'm sure from the Iranian point of view, American women in bikinis are very shocking and shameful. There's a lot of public nudity up on Europe's beaches, and I'm sure the Iranians are uncomfortable with that. But Iran belongs to the Iranian people, and they do have an inherent right to simply say, this is what our culture and our traditions and our priorities will be. And that's it. And nobody really has a right to come on in and say, you should be living more like we do in America. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Thank you for the phone call. And Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to get into some news here now. Apparently over in the Donetsk People's Republic, they are enduring intense mortar shelling by Ukrainian troops. And the villages of Commentator and Leninskoye in the south of the Republic came under shelling by Ukraine's 36th Brigade. And apparently more than 100 mines of various caliber were fired. Shelling was also conducted from weapons of armored infantry carriers and grenade launchers. So it looks like that is starting to really crank on up. Now, some good news coming on out of the Koreas. The two Koreas have now fully restored the military communication line, meaning they can now make phone calls back and forth to make sure there is nothing, no misunderstandings between them. And here is the significant development. Okay, South Korea has suggested setting up a Northeast Asian railroad community with Russia's participation. South Korea will seek to physically connect its roads and railways with those of North Korea before the year's end. They're reunifying. That's why Kim Jong-un is willing to give up his nuclear weapons. He's not going to need them anymore. when it's just one Korea, the U.S. will have absolutely no justification or excuse for an attack, which isn't a guarantee that they won't do that. All righty, we have another caller on the line. James in Sacramento, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, Michael. Aloha, Michael. I was listening to you talking about how they're shutting down. And I mean, I listened to Alex Jones years ago. I mean, a long time ago. And I found him entertaining and also very informative. And then over the years, he kind of got, I don't know, it just became something I didn't want to listen to. But he has these other guys that work for him, like David Knight. I love David Knight. I mean, I love his show. And then who's that guy from England? What was his name? The British guy. The British
Piers
guy.
Morgan?
But pardon?
Piers Morgan?
No. It's that British guy that's been on. He's been on Alex Jones for years. But anyway, but the thing that blows my mind is just how outrageous it's become, where they're just seriously, I mean, just openly showing their hand. The other time I called you, about people that are damaged and they've got, sociological and psychological problems, these people that are running, I don't know, what is it? They're running the government, they're running the news programs, they're running the, I don't know how else to put it, but they seem to be in charge of all this stuff, and they seem to think they've got carte blanche to just take away our First Amendment right. And that's one of I mean, our Second Amendment right is one thing, but don't ever take away my First Amendment right. I've got the right to say something, and if you don't agree with me, all right, fine. We can agree to disagree.
Yeah, or we can have a debate.
I mean,
or we can have a debate. You present your position, I'll present my position, and we'll let the people listening decide for themselves.
Yeah, let's make it a good argument. I mean, I love a good argument. I just can't believe that they're just shutting everything down. You're going to be next, Michael.
Yep.
I'm serious.
Well, I'm not concerned about being deplatformed from Twitter and Facebook because I haven't used them in months. And so it would have absolutely no effect were they to do that. In fact, they may have already deplatformed me and I don't even know it because I don't sign in anymore.
Well, I was normally catching you off of Ron Gibson, on YouTube. So I'm just ready to cancel. I'm not going to watch YouTube anymore. I'm trying to find other platforms.
Well, I'm getting ready to move over to Real Video, which I understand is just taken off like gangbusters, and it's already rivaling YouTube in terms of number of views.
Oh, bingo! There you go. Yeah. Let's hit them where it hurts. It's in their pocketbook.
Yep.
Because that's the only thing they understand is the money.
Yes.
It's like when people were bailing out of Facebook, and then all of a sudden, little squeaky 5'1" guy, starts, squealing. I guess I better do something different.
I'm losing money. I'm losing money. Yeah.
I got a pain in my neck from looking up to the city. Anyway, that little squirt. I mean, I can't believe it. But the only thing he recognized was when the revenue started going away.
Yeah.
That's what gets their attention. They can't censor us, Michael.
Well, we're probably going to have to work at keeping the lines of communication open, just like the former citizens of the Soviet Union. They were communicating with fax machines, and we may have to come up with some other way.
With the old steno machines that they used to use.
Yeah. Okay.
And they used to have they used to have like a code that they used to use in order to work with each other's. Yeah. I remember hearing about that. How the Soviet Union actually did that. The people that were in there trying to work with people outside, you know.
Well, they actually do that here in the United States now. All printers using the yellow ink will print a series of dots that represents a code identifying the specific machine. So if you send somebody a threatening letter, they know who did it. A lot of people don't know that, but that's a feature that's built into all these color printers now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's a beautiful, interesting fact. They can throw milk on that and have it for breakfast. It's factual breakfast. All right. Well, Michael, aloha and mahalo. I love what you do. And I just, they're coming after you next, brother. Trust me. Probably. It's all right. Sick. And I can't believe it. I can't believe they're doing it.
Well, I can. It was kind of an inevitability. And I smell panic and fear.
Yeah, we saw it coming.
In this reaction here. Anyway, Fred, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. I'm sorry, James, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. We're going to switch over to Fred from Harbor Springs. Aloha, Fred. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I love your program, Mike, and I've got a couple issues I'd like to discuss. The one thing that I thought was really critical as far as Alex Jones and Donald Trump, after they were pushing the story that Assad gassed his own people, and then Donald Trump attacked with the 100 cruise missiles, God knows where, at the air base they were doing. I remember seeing a video of Alex Jones on YouTube where they just announced that Trump had attacked Syria with these cruise missiles, and Alex Jones said on air, F Trump, F his whole damn family. I don't know. Did you ever see that one?
No, I never really did, but I can understand the reaction. I had a strong reaction when I realized that Trump twice attacked Syria with cruise missiles based on completely bogus, made-up false flags.
And, it wasn't on air. It was before the program. And I don't know who actually put it on YouTube, but I saw it and I was going, oh my God, he doesn't even know the facts and he was just reacting like a crazy man. Do you mind if I talk about the vaccine issue, if I may?
Yeah, real briefly.
Yeah, the one thing that a lot of people don't understand is that when they developed the cell line, we have attenuated vaccines, which is a very weak virus, and then we have the dead, like Jonas Salk had the dead virus, and Albert Sabin, as far as the polio virus, had the attenuated virus. And we look back in history and we go, well, how come the Black Plague or all these diseases didn't kill everybody on the planet? And the reason being is that as the disease travels from one person to the next person to the next person, 50 or 60 people down the line, they only get a fever or something. That's what attenuation is caused by, and that's what the pharmaceutical companies realized. And there was a guy named Maurice Hilleman who was the head vaccine producer for Merck Pharmaceuticals. And what they do is to attenuate the virus, okay? And at that time they were doing the polio. They would grow the virus, and at that time would be monkey kidneys, okay, that they got from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would reintroduce it to another kidney, and 60 kidneys down the line, okay, the virus would be so weak that they could actually put it into human bodies, and they would create antibodies for it, okay? But what they found out at that time is that, you've heard of SV40, simian virus 40,
yep.
that we got in the polio vaccine. All right, we got the polio vaccine. The wild viruses that they were actually getting from the monkey kidneys they were growing or doing the cell line in was actually causing and the SV40 was the cancer virus that
Yes.
78 million people received, okay?
Yep.
So what I'm trying to say now is, so the pharmaceuticals have found out that in order to get away from those wild viruses, and I tell a lot of Christian groups, is that now they're growing the cell lines to attenuate them in aborted fetus tissue. So all the vaccines, now we have 9 vaccines right now are grown in aborted fetus tissue. And what's happening is, Michael, is that we're getting these foreign DNA from these children, okay? I mean, the MMR was developed with lungs from an aborted 3-month-old fetus, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening is that as you inject these foreign DNA from all these aborted children into the body's going, oh my God, we have lung tissue here from an aborted fetus. So now all of a sudden everybody has asthma and allergies, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They're building up antibodies that will attack lung tissue.
Yep.
So, but I guess the whole point is that if you're a Christian or whatever, if you don't believe in abortion, if you have your child vaccinated, they're actually putting the aborted fetus DNA into your child's body, which causes all these terrible autoimmune diseases for the children. Just like Richard Thompson
No,
saying.
there's a lot of stuff in these
MMR
vaccines that causes harm. Peanut oil is an adjuvant, is the reason that we have this epidemic of peanut anaphylaxis. Getting on back to the Black Death, though, the reason that it didn't kill everybody is any pathogen, bacteria or virus, that immediately kills its host is an unsuccessful form of life because it limits the ability to transfer to a new host. And will die with the host there. And so over time, all disease-causing organisms evolve to be less lethal because that makes them more successful. Measles is a good example. When measles first showed up, it was virtually a slate wiper. People died from that. Today, it's considered a childhood nuisance.
Well, and as far as measles is concerned, I might like to disagree with you on that. Even polio. I mean, Dr. Russell Blaylock, have you heard of him?
Yes.
The world-famous neurologist, okay? He went back and he did all the research and found out that he said polio used to be like they used to call it the summer flu. And you'd get it, and some people would have paralysis. Very rare would you get paralysis. But within a year, the paralysis was gone. But what happened is that in the 1940s, they came up with the vaccine for, I'm trying to figure what it was. But what he said, and all the evidence points to, was the fact that the vaccine that they were actually giving people at that time was actually causing the polio to migrate, okay, and to actually come into another new disease, because most of the people that got the polio were the ones that were vaccinated with the diphtheria. It was diphtheria vaccine, okay?
Yes.
And he went into great detail about the diphtheria vaccine actually caused a mutation of the polio, okay? Because before then, everybody would get polio. They call it the summer flu. So what happened is that people are actually... but if you look at polio and you look at all the states that had the polio vaccine, okay, Idaho and another state, actually, when they started doing the polio vaccine, they stopped doing it because the polio vaccine was actually causing more paralysis for polio throughout the whole country. So polio was not eradicated by the vaccine. It just burned itself out. And that's the sad point about
We've seen that with a lot of vaccines, where the vaccine, instead of protecting us against the diseases, actually causes them. And over the last several years, there'll be these outbreaks of mumps and measles. And of course, the corporate media is saying, get vaccinated, get vaccinated, get vaccinated. And it turns out the people who got sick had actually been vaccinated, and it gave them the disease.
3 times too. Well, Jonas Salk appeared before the Congress in 1976, And in his testimony, he is the one who developed the dead vaccine, the polio vaccine.
Yep.
And he said all polio from 1956 until today is caused by the vaccine. That was his testimony. This is the guy who developed the vaccine for polio. So there's so much disinformation, but you know what? The pharmaceuticals, I would say that why are they advertising on TV? We can't buy that stuff. The Congress should actually make them not actually have a position on TV, because now they bought and paid for all the TV. Nobody that has a vaccine research or anything can say anything negative about the pharmaceuticals because they own.
It's a corrupted system. It's a corrupted system. And the United States is one of only 3 nations that allows advertisements for prescription medicines on television. Anyway, listen, Fred, we got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back with more news. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And getting on back here to the news, we were talking about Korea before, and this plan where South Korea is going to basically join all the roads and railroads with North Korea by the end of the year. So they are moving toward reunification, and that is just going to pull the rug out from underneath U.S. plans to keep that war going in North Korea. Now, Putin says he's ready to meet Kim Jong-un, and says it's going to be a personal meeting. Apparently Putin sent Kim Jong-un a congratulatory telegram from the Russian leader on the occasion of Liberation Day, which is celebrated by the 2 Koreas as of today. So again, the new reunified Korea will be moving out of the U.S. sphere of influence. Over in China, their Foreign Ministry, Defense Ministry, and Taiwan Affairs Office of the State Council had some harsh criticism for the new U.S. National Defense Authorization Act, basically saying that the 2019 National Defense Authorization Act is reviving Cold War paranoia. This is the China Daily newspaper, citing Chinese experts who said the language used in the act sets a dangerous precedent by reviving Cold War paranoia, leading to possible arms races, regional tensions, and mistrust in global relations. Well, of course, that's the reason for Cold War, a new arms race to make the military-industrial complex wealthy on your money. So the government can say, well, look, we're sorry we can't repair the roads and keep the railroads running and, you know, fix all those bridges and everything, but there's a war on. We've got to spend the money on that war. And it is a scam, and I know that because I lived through the original Cold War, and it really was a scam. The only time it got actually dangerous was when we had that Cuban Missile Crisis, which was triggered by the U.S. putting nuclear missiles in Turkey aimed at the Soviet Union. So the Chinese are very unhappy with this new warmongering and fear-mongering. Turning to the domestic politics, probably a lot of you have already heard this right now, but Trump finally got around to revoking the security clearance of former CIA Director John Brennan. And as that caller on our show mentioned earlier, what took him so long? And again, as a lot of people have pointed out, all these Obama officials, when they're no longer in government service, their security clearances should be revoked, especially Hillary, given James Comey's admission that she was careless with classified documents here. Now, as you know, there is this lady, Omarosa, who is making the round. She's trying to peddle a new book, and she's made some very outrageous allegations about Donald Trump. And I'll tell you more about them after station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. And we're talking about Omarosa Manigault Newman, who first met Donald Trump apparently back on Celebrity Apprentice. Then she got hired to be an advisor at the White House. Apparently, a lot of the White House staff really did not get along well with her. And then she got fired by John Kelly. She's claiming she resigned, but there's a recording of her being fired. And there are two issues that she is pushing as she travels around trying to drum up interest in her book. And the first is her sensational claim that Donald Trump had used the N-word. And she claimed there was an audio tape of it and that she'd heard it while working on The Apprentice. Then she changed her story. When she was on MSNBC's Hardball with Chris Matthews, she said she was simply told about this tape recording of Trump using the N-word by former producer Bill Pruitt. Well, Bill Pruitt has now come forward to say, no, there never was any such tape, and he has no idea what Omarosa is talking about. Now, the other issue that Omarosa has been pushing is that she made some surreptitious recordings while she was inside the White House, including in areas that had a no devices policy. And Politico has now listened to all of the tapes provided by Omarosa, and they say there's nothing there. There's no bombshell. There's no smoking gun. You know, it's just people talking about business. And they're saying that the issue here is that unlike the WikiLeaks dump of the DNC emails, when somebody writes an email, they know there's a paper record. The law says you have to keep copies of all of these documents here. When Omarosa is recording people in the White House, she's doing so without their knowledge, which, of course, raises the possibility that somebody may say something juicy, which may have been what Omarosa was after. But Politico is saying there's no there. So this whole brouhaha over Omarosa, Manigault, Newman appears to be imploding. And maybe we can get on to something more important. Speaking of which, we're going to take a phone call from Charles in Canada. Aloha, Charles. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mike. I was just listening, and there was an idea that came to my mind that I wanted to bring up. What it was there's a gentleman on the internet who does big talks, like they last 9 or 10 hours, and frankly, a lot of it, what he says, I'm not crazy about, but he has this one idea, and the idea that I thought was great was, why is it people don't listen to the truth? Why is it, like, what you do on a daily basis is you're trying to get the information out there so people can make proper choices about their lives, even when it's life-threatening. And yet people seem to not want to listen in many cases. And we have to deal with this all the time because we're all trying to talk to people about the news.
Yes.
And the point that this fellow, Mark Cassio, makes is that there's a word called nescience, which means knowledge is not available. So therefore, people can't make the choice, or ignorance. And he doesn't call it. Mark doesn't call it ignorance. He calls it ignorance. And people will purposely avoid understanding because it doesn't tie in with what their value system is, and it's very painful to learn, or they don't have the time, or they don't want to upset their family, or whatever. So we're all locked into this grid of who we are, and it's this ignorance that goes on. Socrates said the beginning of wisdom is understanding how little you really know.
Yes.
And most people never want to understand how little we really know.
True.
Oh, God.
Oh, I guess he just hung up. Okay. But Charles did make a point here that we are raised from infancy indoctrinated with certain beliefs. And those beliefs form the core of our personality. You know, government is good, bankers are honest, corporate media is telling you the truth. And when you challenge those core beliefs in somebody, they respond to it as if it's a personal attack because it is part of their personality. And it can be very difficult getting past that. But that's the reason that people are indoctrinated as preschoolers with certain beliefs about what life is like in the United States or the existence of various gods and so forth and so on. All righty. So, CNN is now bashing Donald Trump for calling the London terror attack a terror attack. CNN apparently took issue with Trump, basically to go after Trump, to just find a way to disparage the president, even though the authorities in London are saying, yes, it was a terror attack. And of course, it's not like anybody's really watching CNN anymore. Apparently, more people are now watching Ancient Aliens than watch CNN. And maybe that's one of the reasons why they're going after the independent media. They don't like the competition. You're not allowed to compete with us. You're not allowed to appeal to our audience just because you're telling the truth. You know, there's no reason we should allow you any kind of permission to play in our playground here. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network here. Okay, as you know, Tesla's having a huge amount of trouble. The SEC is investigating Elon Musk over his claim that he had financing for his privatization plan. And now he's up against some competition because there is a company coming out of China that is about to do its initial public offering. The company is called NIO, N-I-O. It's backed by Chinese conglomerate Tencent and another giant tech company, Baidu. And the Shanghai-based firm listed Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Deutsche Bank, Citi, Credit Suisse, and UBS as the underwriters. So I saw a photo of the proposed car. It looks really kind of cool. Now, the White House economist is out there saying, we may have to kick China out of the World Trade Organization. I am not really sure it's up to the United States to determine who is or is not in the World Trade Organization. But Kevin Hassett, who's chairman of the White House Council of Economic Advisors, was on Fox Business News and said, China really needs to make up its mind. Do they want to be in the community of nations? Do they want to be part of the World Trade Organization and just behave like everybody else, or don't they? Which sounds to me like the White House is realizing this tariff war is backfiring. And now they're trying to get China to basically toe the line by going through the World Trade Organization. But I don't really think the U.S. has the authority to kick China out at this point. Meanwhile, the situation is deteriorating badly over in the U.S.-Turkish alliance. The Turkish lira fell 22% last Friday before recovering to 17% on the backdrop of the Trump administration's announcement to double the tariffs on imports of Turkish steel and aluminum. And apparently, this is big business for Turkey. It's more than $1 billion in trade with the United States. And the U.S. was the top destination for Turkish steel exports in 2017. So Turkey's economy is feeling the pressure. And Erdogan is already out telling the Turkish people, what you're suffering is all because of the United States. They're saying the same thing up in Iran as well here. Now, Turkey is talking about switching from dollars to national currencies in trade with Russia and China. So they're dropping the dollar as well. And I'm sure over at the Federal Reserve, they're saying, you can't do that. Apparently, Deutsche Bank is hitting a rough spot. Their shares have taken a major tumble today. And it's a combination of poor earnings and the fact that they keep getting caught in all of these scandals here. And I think people are starting to say, I'm not sure I want to be associated with the bank that seems to be crooked here. Now, Crimea has ditched Visa and MasterCard in favor of a Russian national payment system. And I'm kind of surprised they didn't do this before, because it gives the U.S. leverage over their economy for this payment system to go through Visa and MasterCard's computers. But those days are over. Crimea's largest bank has finished the procedure of switching all plastic cards to Russia's Mir payment system. Like I said, the rest of the world is setting up these parallel processing payment systems, so they're no longer dependent on the United States of America. getting on back to Turkey, their default risk has spiked to the levels that we saw back in 2008, 2009. People are worried about possible contagion. This is coming from Russell Napier. And we're seeing a lot of the same warning indicators today that we saw back in 2008. There's another real estate bubble. There's a trouble in the bond market. We don't know if there's another major fraud hanging out there that we haven't seen yet, like the mortgage-backed securities. But Wall Street doesn't learn from its mistakes because Wall Street is never forced to pay for them. You are. With TARP and QE and all the rest of it. Now, there's a real estate bubble here in the U.S. There was one in Great Britain, but apparently London house prices are falling at the fastest annual rate since the height of the financial crisis. So that bubble has burst over there. And their black hole in the pension system has grown to nearly 190 billion with a B pounds. 2 out of every 3 pension plans are deeply in the red. Turning over to immigration and the refugee crisis, Italy is now blocking a new non-governmental organization ship after Malta and Spain refused to take them in. Now, the migrants were picked up off the coast of Libya last week by the Aquarius, a rescue vessel run by the Franco-German charity SOS Mediterranee and Doctors Without Borders. And there's also a Reuters journalist, Antonio Denti, who sent the report. Both Malta and Spain have denied docking, with Spain telling the NGO in a statement, at the moment, Spain is not the safest port because it is not the nearest one. And so there are these 141 migrants who are still floating out in the Mediterranean on this ship, and nobody wants them. Okay, let's take another phone call. Bob in Colorado. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I wanted to mention to you, you were just talking about aluminum, and I happened to be at my favorite Cheers bar just as the delivery guy showed up with all the bud and all that stuff.
Yep.
And gave the lady there a big, thick packet. And she said, "What's this?" He said, these are all the price increases because of aluminum.
Yep.
So maybe all the pubsters out there and the drinkers out there that drink in aluminum cans watch the prices go up. I just thought it was funny when you said that. That's all.
No, anything made with aluminum, I frankly switch to glass bottles. I think beer.
Oh yeah, that's how I drink anyway. But
yeah, I think beer still comes in glass bottles.
But when the Budweiser guy came in there and mentioned that about the aluminum prices going up, now the prices of beer is going to go up in aluminum cans. There you go, right there. It's only us little people that are going to be hurt by this. That's all.
You're absolutely right.
Anyway, Mike, I thought it was kind of ironic that you brought that up just as I got home and heard it. So anyway, I hope you have a great evening and a great show. It really is.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Now, apparently in France, there was an Afghan asylum seeker who's been arrested after he went on a knife rampage, injuring 4 people, one of them seriously. And apparently this happened in the town of Périgueux in the country's southwest. And apparently he was seen kicking and banging a vehicle with his feet and fists, then a second car, just out of control. They're saying that he may have been drunk. And again, this migration acts as a filtering process. We're not getting the best people from those source countries. We're getting the ones who couldn't make it in their home countries. We're getting the ones who are fleeing prosecution. We're getting the ones that their own country didn't want them because they're violent or they're mentally ill. It's like that wonderful quote from that British member of the European Parliament. If you import the third world, we're going to have third world problems, and that is exactly what is happening all across Europe and the United States of America. Now, as you know, there was that incident in New Mexico where they've arrested 5 guys for basically training these children how to shoot up schools. And over at 12160, they pointed out that the news coverage on the American corporate media omit all mention that these suspects are Islamic asylum seekers. And well, they just had a quake in Adak, Alaska. All right, here's another interesting little story from 12160.info. Over in West Yorkshire, Great Britain, 30 men have been charged with sexually abusing girls. And I think it is illustrative to go down and mention a few of the names. Banaras Hussein, Muhammad Suhail Arif, Iftikhar Ali, Mohammed Sajid, Fareen Rafiq, Umar Zaman, and so forth and so on. You get the gist of it. You get the gist of it. This open borders immigration refugee thing is a disaster for ordinary people. George Soros thinks it's great, but it's a disaster for ordinary people. And this is what's really giving the impetus to the rise of populist nationalist parties. And of course, the liberals are out there saying, you can't do that. And you can't vote for your nation over all the others. Over in the British Museum is a wonderful museum, and I've been there myself. But as you walk around, you do have to realize that most of what is there was simply looted from other countries during Britain's imperial phase, like the Elgin marbles, which Greece would still like to get back. But apparently there's a collection of 5,000-year-old artifacts that were looted in the wake of the fall of Saddam Hussein in 2003. They've been identified in London. Local police seized the objects from an illegal dealer in antiquities. The items were identified by experts, and they're going to be returned to the Iraqi government, which I think is a really good thing to do. It was something that was really odd about the U.S. invasion of Baghdad. They put all kinds of armed troops around the oil ministry, and they left that Baghdad museum wide open. And it got plundered. Some of the corporate media reporters even took a few things. They had to give them back. All right, so let's start talking about what's going on with InfoWars and the exiling of InfoWars from social media. And Alex Jones is out there saying this mass censorship of conservatives and libertarians is exploding. There is a campaign of demonetization going on. They're trying to basically cut off the financial lifeline to independent media, which is why we need your help here at Republic Broadcasting. Now, Alex Jones went out on Twitter and posted a tweet calling to end censorship, at which point Alex Jones was suspended from Twitter. Little irony there. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey says that he is hoping that Alex Jones will, quote, change his behavior, end quote, as a result of this timeout. Apparently, Twitter has banned Alex Jones for 7 days. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha America, welcome back to the show here. Now, over at CNN, you know, that show that fewer people are watching than they watch Ancient Aliens, Rafia Zakaria, who's an opinion contributor at CNN, came on out and said that Alex Jones' hate speech is a form of terrorism. So now they're trying to ramp up the rhetoric. First of all, they get everybody to accept that any speech that the liberals don't like is automatically hate speech and therefore should be immune from the First Amendment. Now they're ramping it up. Hate speech is a form of terrorism. That's the new spin that's out there. And I think it reflects a certain degree of desperation on the part of the corporate media. And there's another indicator because apparently over at the Lester Holt show, he was interviewing Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey, who as you know, just suspended Jones for abusive behavior, and came on out and claimed Alex Jones was inciting violence toward reporters, toward the media, which is an absolute total fabrication. And what's going on here is they're trying to portray Alex Jones in a way that will destroy sympathy for his situation. It's like the caller we had her earlier in the show. Oh, he's a loudmouth. He's this. He's that. So that people will say, well, maybe he deserves to be silenced. Maybe he deserves to be deplatformed. No, he doesn't. This is all about freedom of speech for all of us. This is not about Alex Jones or any other individual here. And speaking of other individuals, now we're hearing that YouTube is on the verge of deleting Stephen Molyneux's entire channel. Apparently, he got 2 strikes, 2 community guideline strikes within 24 hours, probably as the result of a mass flagging campaign, and is now on the verge of total deletion. One of the really big problems with these social media platforms is they simply accept a negative strike or a complaint without checking it out. They don't want to spend the money to actually have people go in and look and say, no, this video doesn't say what we were told it was saying. They just go with it. And so anybody who wants to get independent media off of social media, they just go on in and start complaining about it. They set up multiple accounts, so they pretend to be multiple people, and they go on in and say, oh, this is terrible, this is hate speech, this is racism. Then there's another take on this. This is from Lou Rockwell, basically saying that this social media censorship basically ties in with the Russia hysteria, because they're not getting traction with the Russia hysteria, with the Russian collusion, and it's because of the independent media casting doubt on what's going on. So the Russia hysteria gave us the social media censorship because the U.S. government has lost the ability to lie effectively to the American people. So has the corporate media, and they don't like that. Story out of Natural News asking a very simple question. Why does Mark Zuckerberg have the power to decide which Americans can speak? And he's saying it's time to break up big tech and restore freedom. And I agree. And the part that is really frustrating to me is, where is Donald Trump on all of this? Donald Trump has to know that it was the independent media that was a decisive factor in him winning the election in 2016. The corporate media was totally opposed to him. They were lying about him left and right. They were protecting Hillary Clinton. The American voters found out what was really going on because of the independent media. And if Trump doesn't step on in, first of all, it's a harsh betrayal of all of us who supported him. A second, it'll cost him politically. He could lose the House of Representatives this November, at which point all the investigations into the Department of Justice and the Clinton Foundation and the FBI and the rest of it will all be made to go away by the new committee chairman, who will then start piling on more investigations about Donald Trump. Trump has to understand this is what's going on. And if Trump allows the independent media to be silenced, then he's a one-term president. Because the corporate media still hates him, the corporate media is still lying about him, the corporate media is going to do everything they can to get him out of office in 2020, if not before. Anyway, a little clarification about that story on Real Video. Apparently video uploaders are getting more views on Real Video than on YouTube, proof of extreme YouTube shadow banning. And of course, we knew that. We used to see that happen all the time on Claire's music videos. Some of them would get really popular, like in times of war, and then all of a sudden the view numbers would drop. We've seen videos over at YouTube where the number of likes exceeds the number of views. Where are the GOP congressmen? They're in the same place as Donald Trump. Without an independent media, the corporate media is just going to go after them. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And Paul Craig Roberts came out with an observation basically saying if you want to know how screwed up this country has become, you just need to look at the fact that patriotism is now associated with the suppression of dissent. If you're a patriot, you're opposed to the First Amendment. And certainly from the liberals' point of view, that's it. You know, we're saving the country, we're protecting the country's institutions. We've got to silence all of this speech that we don't agree with. Apparently over at Jihad Watch, they've been notified by Patreon that MasterCard has forced Patreon to deplatform and remove Jihad Watch. So this is now the money getting on in. We're talking credit card companies, not just social media platforms here. This is serious. This is all-out war on the independent media here. Okay, down at the Southern Poverty Law Center, apparently they're looking at a whole bunch of defamation lawsuits for its use of the label hate group, which I guess I would fit into that as well, but I haven't filed a defamation suit yet. But if they start succeeding, I just might. Meanwhile, over at the BBC, they've been caught cherry-picking anti-privacy computer scientists for a segment that they were doing on what a good idea it would be to put backdoors into cryptographic systems. And one very well-known security expert was basically refused permission to be on the show because he refused to say it would be a good idea for a backdoor. All those backdoors in your computer, inevitably, they get found by the cyber criminals and used against you. And the government doesn't really care. As long as they can spy on you and peek at you and make sure you're not thinking those double plus ungood thoughts, who cares if your credit cards get maxed out? You'll pay it off eventually. Apparently, there is yet another flaw or intentional hardware hatch in the Intel chips. They're calling it the foreshadow flaw, and it could put millions of devices at risk. And Intel keeps saying it's a mistake, it's a design flaw. I don't think so. There's been too many of them. I think these are deliberate hardware backdoors, which obviously, since you can't open up the chip, you can't do a thing about it. Now, down in Florida, they've declared a state of emergency after a devastating toxic algae bloom hits the Gulf coast, killing tourism and wildlife. And it's basically a red tide, and it's a specific species of algae which is toxic. And it tends to grow very rapidly and very dense, and it can be harmful to people with respiratory problems. And it's spread through the Gulf of Mexico since it began all the way last October. And it also means there are tons of dead fish, leaving a foul-smelling odor. So, nasty things over there. Now, there's one school of thought that these toxic red algae blooms are related to industrial pollutant runoff into the ocean, because these red algae blooms are a relatively new phenomenon. They weren't reported back in like the 1800s or the early 1900s. It was only in the late 1900s that they started to appear all over the place here. Here's an interesting little story. 75% of physicians in the world would refuse chemotherapy for themselves if they came down with cancer. And they do so because of its devastating effects on the entire body and the immune system, and because of extremely low success rate. Apparently, only 2 to 4% of all cancers even respond to chemotherapy or prove to be life-extending. Yet it's prescribed across the board for just about every kind of cancer. Why? Because it makes money. Now, a little secret that the oncologists don't want you to know. 25% of all cancers spontaneously remit. They just go away. But of course, in order to maintain the cash flow going, the attitude is, well, we don't know which 25% are going to spontaneously get better, so we'll just treat everybody. Now, as you know, Monsanto is having a big fight over glyphosate. They lost that major lawsuit, $280 million. They're trying to appeal, but it's encouraging other people to sue them as well. And now it turns out there's a new report that has found glyphosate, which is the chemical that is thought to be the carcinogen, in a number of popular breakfast foods and cereals sold to children. The study was done by the nonprofit Environmental Working Group, and it discovered trace amounts of glyphosate in oats, granolas, and snack bars. 31 out of 45 tested products had levels higher than what some scientists consider safe for children. And a lot of scientists are now trying to keep glyphosate out of crops due to concerns that it is a dangerous carcinogen, because it does get inside the plant itself. And even worse, when you go to the supermarket and you see the produce section, they spray that with glyphosate. Not because they're killing any weeds, but because it acts as a preservative. It keeps the produce looking fresher longer. So you get to that organic section here. It's amazing here. Alrighty, over in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, they're still dealing with this Ebola outbreak. There are now 41 people dead, and their concern is because the cases are in a conflict zone where people are moving around a lot, it may be hard to control this outbreak, and it could very easily spread to other parts of Africa, along with the refugees. Now, as you know, we're getting to the end of summer. It's back to school. You've probably seen all the commercials on TV about, get the school supplies for the little kiddies. Over in Colorado, School District 27J is trying a new experiment. They're going to a 4-day school week where the students go from Tuesday through Friday. And same thing with the teachers. Now, the teachers work 1 half Monday per month as well. But they're going to see if this helps the kids study better, what the economic implications are going to be. My concern is it may be more about saving a few bucks on teachers' salaries than it is about educating the kids. All righty, we're going to take a phone call from Chris in Tampa. Aloha, Chris. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, Mike, first off, you mentioned earlier that Israel likes to maintain or assert its nuclear ambiguity. I emailed you a little earlier on the joint operating environments that was issued by the United States Joint Forces Command in 2008.
Yes, I saw that.
And it was, oh, great. All right, and I'll just quote the relevant part. Signed by Mattis, James Mattis, General U.S. Marine Corps Commander, United States Joint Forces, says, quote, on page 37, says, quote, in effect, there is a growing arc of nuclear powers running from Israel in the west through an emerging Iran to Pakistan, India, and on to China, North Korea, and Russia in the east, end quote. So we do recognize them officially as a nuclear power, and then there's that article I also sent link to you. Israel is a nuclear power. Should Israel? The article, should Israeli nuclear bombs be inspected? Where just 3 years ago in 2015, it was also came out as a Freedom of Information Act request. In that article, it's a long article. You can check it out at your convenience. Now, you're just talking about the red tide situation, and I wanted to first off, confirm what you say is true, that it's not just as they're trying to claim in the media that it's people with their septic tanks and their fertilizer runoff. It's not just that. is also Mosaic Phosphate Mining Company,
Okay.
and they fund Moat Marine Labs, which the Florida Fish and Wildlife Service is quoting in trying to indemnify Whole Blameless Mosaic Phosphate Mining Company.
Yeah.
I'll have to send you that. I'll email you that article, or a good article on that. Green Med Info from August 4th. GreenMedInfo.com. The article is entitled "Ties Between Red Tide Expert Moat (MOTE) and Florida Polluter Mosaic Raises Red Flags." And yeah, there is definitely a correlation. A good friend of mine, Chris Pitts, has been posting in a lot of these Facebook groups showing the correlation in Charlotte Harbor, Port Charlotte Harbor, that correlation between the phosphate runoff from fertilizer and the red tide bloom. So, but I want to also just refer to my radio show that folks can check out even more information at theliberationStation.com, local radio show here on 5 Florida stations. That's THELiberationStation.com. Just 2 weeks ago, I was honored to interview 4 folks who were local activists in DeSoto County who beat Mosaic Phosphate Mining Company, prohibiting them from getting 14,000 square miles of land to strip that they wanted to strip mine. So that was a good victory, and wanted to let folks know that they can get in touch with them through my website there at theliberationStation.com to learn how to sustain this triumph and defeat Mosaic Phosphate Mining Company elsewhere. It's just awful what they've been doing over these decades, or the phosphate mining companies have, and Mosaic, has bought previous phosphate mining companies, and how they've had sinkholes they don't report back in 2016, and EPA's fine. There's just so many disaster after disaster that they've gotten away with, or sometimes a slap on the wrist for, and they have radioactive water that's going from these sinkholes into the Floridan aquifer. So that's a terrible problem, but a possible solution is what I saw that on WINK reported that they are using ozone to bubble ozone into body of water, into lakes or ponds. And they show on there, and this is linked up on my website on the August 7th edition, where WINK has a video segment. Nano bubble technology could be a solution to Southwest Florida blue-green algae. So they're bubbling ozone up in this pond, and they can show within a day it's much lighter green. So it's very encouraging.
Well, it is. They're making progress. They're making progress here. Anyway, Chris, I'm sorry to be abrupt here, but I do need to let you go because we're coming to the end of the program, and I got a bunch of news I still need to get through. So thank you for the information, and we're definitely going to let you go. And it's an open secret, Israel has nuclear weapons, but the official story is still nuclear ambiguity because Israel refuses to sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And under U.S. law, the U.S. government is not allowed to send financial assistance to any country in possession of nuclear weapons technology that refuses to sign the NNPT. So there we are again. Now, getting on back to the news. We were talking about education. And over in Kansas City, boys and girls are going to be sharing gender-neutral restrooms. The North Kansas City School District is going fully gender neutral at 2 new elementary schools which opened today, as well as in a few renovated restrooms in North Kansas City High School and the 6th grade centers. And I'm wondering how the parents are feeling about that. So, now, do you remember Jack Phillips? He's this baker, and he got sued by a gay couple for refusing to bake a wedding cake for their upcoming nuptials. And the gay couple decided they were going to take a stand. We were going to, force him to ignore his religious beliefs. And I remember, going into a lot of places of business where there's a sign on the wall. We reserve the right to refuse service to anybody. And the appropriate thing to have done would be for the gay couple to say, all right, well, we understand that you're not comfortable with this. Do you know a baker who could take care of us? But no, they took him to court, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. But they're not going to leave him alone. Apparently, once again, he's being harangued by the Colorado Civil Rights Commission for refusing to bake a cake with a pro-LGBTQ message. Now, this militancy is going to backfire. You know, it's one thing to say, we want you to accept us, and we say, okay, sure, we accept you. Not a problem. But this idea of literally trying to force their life choices onto other people and override other people's rights to their own lives, it's going to backfire. People are going to look at this behavior and say, this is out of control. All right, let's talk about that bridge over in Italy that collapsed. And apparently, there was a photo that was taken just a few weeks ago showing the bridge was in a dilapidated state, that some of the cables were broken and hanging down over the side. And engineers are saying the bridge was a death trap. And of course, the storm did not help. But apparently, something like 2-3 years ago, it was suggested the bridge be demolished because it was in terrible shape and nobody could come up with the money to repair it. And as usual, the government just said, well, we'll just cross our fingers and hope for the best here. But Italy's deputy prime minister is blaming the EU for the deadly bridge collapse because of how the European Union is not sending enough money back to the member states to take care of proper infrastructure. Brussels is kind of like a money motel. Money goes in, but it doesn't come out. Kind of a lot like Washington, D.C. We got to take a break for commercials. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today here. And down in Puerto Rico, they have finally restored electricity to all of the island for the first time since Hurricane Maria struck nearly 11 months ago. And basically, crews working in the southern city of Ponce reconnected the last neighborhood that had been offline since September 20th. And the lights are back on. I'm sure that's making everybody's lives a lot easier here. Now, speaking of lives being a lot easier, as you know, Mars has been in the grip of a major dust storm for basically 2 months now. And Curiosity, of course, had no problem with it because it's nuclear powered. But Opportunity, which is a solar-powered rover, went dark. Now, supposedly, there is a system where every once in a while it wakes up again, tries to see if there's enough light to charge the batteries, at which point it'll start charging the batteries, then it'll turn itself back on. Big question is how much dust has accumulated on those solar panels, which actually was an issue earlier on in the mission where there'd been a large accumulation of dust on the solar panels and it degraded the performance. And then just blind luck, one of those little dust devils that whirls across the Martian surface hit Opportunity dead on and just cleaned it right off, and they had power. Still no word from it, though. The flight controllers are basically playing music in the control room, theme song for every new day, but they're admitting morale is getting a little shaky. They're concerned that it's been so long that even the residual charge in the battery may have died, at which point there is no bringing Opportunity back. But it's been up there for a long time. It's done a lot of really, really good work. And, you know, I can understand how those people in the control room feel. You actually do develop, call it an emotional connection with the hardware, and you project into it. Like you feel you're out there with it. And it's always very sad when a mission shuts down or is shut down. And you know, I'm sure they're going to go on to other missions and so forth. But it's kind of a close family-like feeling among all the controllers. They're all brothers and sisters, comrades in space, if you will. Meanwhile, over in California, those poor people in California, have they not suffered enough? Apparently, they've discovered underneath the Long Valley caldera, there is another supervolcano containing 240 cubic miles of magma. And apparently, there was an eruption at the caldera. That's why the caldera is there. It occurred 767,000 years ago. It released 140 cubic miles of material into the atmosphere. Now, remember in 1980, Mount St. Helens, when it erupted, released just 0.29 cubic miles, and that pretty much blanketed the entire country. I actually still have some ash from that volcano and the world-famous What Really Happened debris collection. All right, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. Please stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got a lot of interesting things to share with you. Please take what you learn here and share it with everybody, especially this issue of the shutdown of the independent media, the deprivation of our First Amendment right to freedom of speech. We've got to make a big stink about this. So we'll be back tomorrow, and aloha, America.